Hi everyone, I'm Dick Barry. Well, the weather's finally warming up again. Summer's right around the corner. Time to hit the road again. Let's do it. But before we hit the road again for some new adventures, let's look back on some of my favorite journeys from last season. Let's start with a visit to Maumee Bay State Park.
This is the Nature Center. The Nature Center opened a couple years ago, and it's an education center. There's a lot to learn here about the wetlands in Northwest Ohio.
Inside, there's plenty of displays for kids of all ages to enjoy. You can hold a turtle, even watch moths hatch. A naturalist will answer all your questions.
This is the boardwalk. It goes 2 miles through the wetlands. And there's a smaller quarter-mile loop if you want to just do that. It's different every season of the year. This time of year there's a lot of water. In the summertime, pretty soon here we're going to have a lot of blossoms, and the flowers are very tropical in nature, and it's like being somewhere completely different than where we are now.
Sure. Talk about being somewhere else. Ever golf on a Scottish links course? You can here, and it's designed by the renowned Arthur Hills.
It's rolling hills, flat fairways, a lot of bunkers, big greens, wonderful challenge to golf.
The centerpiece of the park is a hotel and conference center. There's 120 rooms here, even some private cottages to find. And if you're looking for a new dining experience, check out the Water's Edge restaurant. It's got a fantastic view of Lake Erie.
Now, if you're thinking of getting a room out here this summer, well, it may be too late. Most have already been booked. A suggestion, though, call in advance. There may be some cancellations. That's the best way to get a room.
But that shouldn't stop you from paying a visit. As the weather warms, you'll be able to rent boats, bikes, wave runners, even go parasailing. And there's an amphitheater featuring entertainment. Maumee Bay State Park. It's the perfect place to come on the spur of the moment.
I think that it's unique to Northwest Ohio because it's a quick drive from just downtown Toledo to an area where there's so many different things to do.
The bay and the lake hold other attractions for you, including one right on the water. Hop on board the Emerald Empress in Sandusky for a lazy day cruise. Destinations during your 8-hour trip: Kelly's Island, then Putin Bay. And while you're leisurely cruising Lake Erie, you'll be treated to a continental breakfast and a picnic lunch.
Ferris wheel is one of the tallest in North America.
Pointing out the sights along the way is Virginia Newman. Her Emerald Empress is the crown jewel of the Newman Cruise and Ferry Line fleet. The family-owned business has navigated the waters of Lake Erie since 1907. Virginia worries we take the North Coast for granted, and day trippers like this give us all a greater appreciation of the lake.
I think people have a tendency to make plans for destinations far away. We don't realize and take advantage of the wonderful opportunities we have right here.
Now, the Lazy Day Cruise is one of 17 voyages you can take on the Emerald Empress. You got a brunch cruise, a dinner cruise, a dance cruise, even a church cruise on Sunday, but that's free.
The ship is 150 feet long and can carry 600 passengers. 3 decks offer dinner seating for up to 400 people. And if you do decide to hop on board the Emerald Empress, reservations, no matter what the cruise, are mandatory.
These are food cruises, and since we can't run out to the nearest grocery store to put food on, we want to make sure that we have enough for everybody. So even if it's just a couple of hours notice, let us know, please, that you're coming.
And they're hoping you come by soon. After all, summer's only 3 months long. No, a storm hasn't moved in. This is the Surf's Up Aquatic Center in Sandusky, a splashy swinging action wave pool.
Almost looks like we're having a few whitecaps out there.
It's a great place to swim, body surf, tube, or ride a raft. And you don't even have to go to the ocean to catch these 4-foot waves.
It's a zero-depth pool, so at the shallow end of the pool here, we are actually at 0 depth, so it's like being at the beach. And then we go all the way to 8 feet deep with some pretty sizable waves.
The Surf's Up Aquatic Center runs in cycles. You got 10 minutes of calm and then 12 minutes of waves.
And I bet a lot of you are wondering the same thing. How are those waves created? Well, Dan's got the secret.
Alternating air back and forth into the pool here off of these 4 blowers then pushes air in the water, which generates the wave. And they're all timed accordingly so that we get the great wave that you saw out there.
And it also makes for a great, affordable family day tripping adventure. Just don't forget your suit. Okay, let's head further east to Cleveland's Metropark Zoo and its own rainforest. It's a beautiful setting featuring lush plants and exotic animals. The goal here is to make us all realize the importance of rainforest survival in faraway places like Asia, Africa, and Central and South America.
Now starting here, this is the South American section on this side.
And it's a real jungle in here. Anteaters stroll by. An orangutan swings up above. And this guy, well, he's a 39-year-old crocodile named Dreadnought. Oh, and watch out for those free-flying birds.
Yeah, you gotta watch your head a little bit.
Watch your head a little bit, yeah, okay. And what would a rainforest be without rain? It comes down in buckets at this Malayan pond every 12 minutes, complete with lightning and thunder. The real rainforests generate an estimated 20% of the world's oxygen. Scientists believe that deforestation could alter the ozone layer, affect climate, and disturb water distribution patterns. You're reminded of that as you leave the rainforest.
This is the number of remaining acres of rainforest in the world. And as you can see, we're losing them at about 1 acre a second.
Why is that?
Again, it's due to development, farming.
But you don't have to worry about that happening here. This is one rainforest that will always flourish and never be destroyed by man. Ready for some time tripping? Experience the 1830s aboard a canal boat at Providence Metropark.
This is the best way to travel. What would you rather do? Take one of those dirty old steam trains?
The Miami and Erie Canal ran 250 miles between Toledo and Cincinnati. It linked our area to the growing outside world.
It brought in a lot of economy, expanded the Midwest, and opened up markets for the farmers and merchants to the East Coast.
And this is where all that history happened. A section of the original canal is restored, as well as a working canal lock. The captain on our 45-minute journey back in time is Doug Banson.
All canal boats are built the same, between 75 and 80 foot long. This is a small one. This is only 60 foot long. We may get grounded sometimes, but the water level is only 4 feet deep in the canal. We get up to the lock. This lock's about 10 feet deep. There's a speed limit on the canal at 4 miles an hour. And they got state boats that'll give you a ticket and charge you $10 if you go over 4 miles an hour, but sometimes we go over that anyhow.
During the 1800s, this lock number 44, had a pretty notorious reputation. It was considered the most dangerous stop along the canal.
The workers digging the canal will get paid partially in whiskey. And so after a hard day's work, then they usually drank that whiskey and enjoyed themselves.
That bell's for the lock tender to get ready for us. Sometimes there'll be 4 or 5 boats backed up trying to get through. We got a good fighting crew, so we're going through first.
Between here and Cincinnati, you got just over 100 locks between here and Cincinnati. It raises 500 feet, and then it's got to go down another 500 feet.
The wicket gates are below the water level. As I said, this is about 10 feet deep here. We'll be raised 3.5 feet to the next level. See, the water's coming in from there and bringing us up to the level of the next canal. This is the way to travel.
And we're going to travel to Germany by way of Frankenmuth, Michigan next as we go day tripping once again. Frankenmuth was settled in 1845 by a group of German Lutheran immigrants. They liked the area because it reminded them of their homeland.
They were missionaries that were going to instruct the local Indian residents in Christianity, and they founded St. Lawrence Lutheran Church 150 years ago, so that's the basis of the founding of our community.
St. Lawrence is a Gothic-style church seating 1,400. This Frankenmuth landmark features elegant Corinthian columns, an intricate ceiling design, and beautiful stained glass windows. You can learn more about Frankenmuth's history cruising the Cass River aboard the Riverview Queen paddle boat. There's a spectacular view of the newly expanded Bavarian Inn and the covered bridge leading to it.
Back in the 1847, it was used real heavy for logging. A lot of white pine logs were floated down this river to the mills.
And what would a Bavarian village be without some Bavarian beer? The Frankenmuth microbrewery brews 13,000 barrels every year. The 15 brands offered are naturally brewed.
We only use water, malts, yeast, and the malts. And we have one beer, which is a wheat malt beer, which we use a combination of the two, but we don't use any rice or corn or any other grains in the beer.
And up the street, there's Zender's, home of the world-famous Frankenmuth all-you-can-eat chicken dinner. There's enough room here for 1,500 people, and everybody seems to stop by. Management says they serve up 7,000 chickens every week. But any time seems to be a good time to come to Frankenmuth. It's a place with rich history and strong ethnic pride. Closer to home is another village that reminds you not of Germany, but this corner of the world, as it used to be. Northwest Ohio used to be known as the Great Black Swamp. It was the last area of Ohio to be settled, and this was a typical village.
Life here was hard, but these people came in with guts and determination, and we are sitting in some of the nation's finest farmland, and we want them never to forget that.
And back then you found craftsmanship at its finest. Blacksmith Michael Benderly bends iron to art while listening to the pounding of a power hammer.
But actually I find it very soothing because the hammer, especially working with the power hammer, it works so fast that you have to think so fast. You have to think way ahead of it. So it really keeps you occupied.
I enjoy making pots because I like very much the idea of making things for people to use.
And potter Mark Nafziger knows how to draw a crowd. You'll always find him sitting at his potter's wheel talking about his craft.
This clay here really comes from one of the oldest and largest beds of clay on the face of the earth.
Both Mark and Michael work on commission. Solder provides the work area to perfect their craft. There's much more to see and do at the Solder Farm and Craft Village. Come here for your history lesson, but also come here to have some fun. You know, you probably noticed we include some history lessons in all of our travels. Well, that's because there's so much history along all these roads, especially when the roads head south from Toledo to Marion. Marion, Ohio claims our nation's 29th president as a native son. This was the home of Warren G. Harding and his wife for 30 years. Harding even campaigned for president from the front porch.
He felt that he could come out here and give his major speeches from here in kind of a relaxed mode and exuding confidence and all those good things that politicians like to do.
But the Harding home isn't the only place in Marion where you can touch the past. Welcome to the Charlie Sens Antique Auto Museum. More than 100 classics are under one roof. Most of them make up the private collection of Charlie Sens.
I just got the fever about 30 years ago. I bought a car at auction. And then about maybe, I'd say 7 years ago, we just went completely crazy.
And a year ago, Charlie Sens decided to share his collection with the public.
It's the favorite automobile I own, right here, the 32 Ford Model B. Not a Model A, but it's the Model B Ford. It had the four-cylinder flathead engine in it. One of the best engines ever made by Ford.
You know, this is more than just an antique car museum to Charlie sends. To hear him talk about these vehicles, well, they're all part of his family.
That's right. Every car here has a history, and I know the personal history about it because we research each car before we buy it. And then in the process of buying it, we get to know the family, we get to know the background of the car, and you really become intimate with these people. They're part of the family when you buy their car.
These classics from another era survived decades of change in our country. But now, the cars are spending their sunset years well cared for in the Charlie Sens Antique Auto Museum in Marion. Coming up, a little rock and a little roll as we go day tripping once again. Ain't nothing like the real thing, and this is the real thing. 2648 West Grand Boulevard, Hitsville, USA, home of Motown Records. The man behind all the hits, Berry Gordy, lived here. In 1959, he developed the Motown sound, a mix of blues, gospel, and urban sophistication. For anyone growing up in the 60s, it became the soundtrack of your life, and probably still is.
Motown's music crossed all ethnic and cultural lines. Not only did it cross black-white lines here in the United States, but it also crossed the ocean.
In this house, you'll find Studio A. It was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, kind of like the auto assembly line Gordy once worked on. A kid like Smokey Robinson could walk in one door an unknown and out another a star.
Well, what Smokey would do is he would sit next to the engineer, and as producer, he would be in charge of the session, artistically and musically. So he's directing not only the engineer's actions, but he's also directing the singers and musicians who are in the other room. They did a lot of overdubbing where they would bring in, they did not have to record everything at once. Things could be recorded in segment. They had the recording technology that enabled them to do that. This is where they sang, basically. Sometime if they wanted to isolate the lead singer, they would pull this baffle out, and it's a box, and they could stand behind the box so it would separate the lead singer's voice away from the background singer's voices.
Hitsville, USA fell silent in 1972 after the Commodores recorded their Machine Gun album. The Motown musical magic had grown up, gone corporate, and moved to Hollywood. But for day trippers, it's only a short drive up I-75 where the Motown legacy was born and lives on.
2, 1.
This was the scene last September when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame opened its doors and its heart to the world, and it proved the heart of rock and roll is still beaten in Cleveland. It rises above the shores of Lake Erie, a place to preserve, interpret, and celebrate the history of rock and roll. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Museum is about music, how it changed our lives, and continues to change our lives. The collection charts the evolution of rock from its birth in the 50s, its explosion in the 60s, and into the present.
I think there is a serious side to it that needs to be investigated and studied in our museum. But at the same time, I think, rock and roll is about fun, and it's about, being of the moment, and there's a lot of excitement to rock and roll, and we didn't want to lose that in building the museum.
So how do you do that? Well, how about a multimedia display tracing the history of fashion in rock? Slap on a set of headphones to find out about all those one-hit wonders. But along the way, there's authentic artist memorabilia, and plenty of it. Elvis's leather suit from his comeback TV special. Learn about the Motown sound, admiring the costumes of the Supremes. Even Alice Cooper has a place here. Remember the guillotine scene from his shows? And check out the spacious front lobby. You might recognize those soaring cars. They're from U2's Zoo TV tour. Upstairs is where you meet the Hall of Fame inductees. No statues, busts, plaques, or trophies here. Just a darkened room with images of your rock heroes fading in and fading out.
So I hope people can come in and sort of get an idea of where the music came from and where it's going. And I also want them to have fun. I mean, I think this should be a place where there's fun and some excitement. And, I think those are really the things.
Hey, do you remember I promised you a little roll along with your rock? Well, let's roll on down to the Motorcycle Heritage Museum near Columbus in Westerville. The Motorcycle Heritage Museum is kind of like an art museum. The exhibits here rotate on a regular basis, except for one thing. The exhibits here have spokes and chains.
Each one has a theme with a goal to preserve the heritage of motorcycling in America. The majority of the bikes are privately owned and loaned for the duration of each exhibit.
We give people who have gone through all this work and have these wonderful machines a place to show them and a chance to show them to the public, as well as we were really interested in the educational end of it.
And through the end of next year, this gallery at the Motorcycle Heritage Museum is where some lost legends have come to life. And the ride's not over yet. Stay with us.
Well, that's where we were last year. Hard to tell where we're going to be going this year, but you can find out every Thursday night at 6 o'clock on Toledo 11, the news channel. From Ohio to Michigan to Indiana, points in between, we're going to go day tripping again. I'm Dick Barry along with photographer Jerry Mazer. Thanks, Jer. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
If you'd like a VHS tape of tonight's broadcast, please send a check or money order for $14.95 to Toledo 11 Special Reports, P.O. Box 1111, Toledo, Ohio 43699 1111.